Committee of Tuesday, February 16th, 2016. Kathy, would you call the order, please? And welcome to our meeting. Do you remember how to do it?
Well, if I mess up, please forgive me. It's
Okay.
been a year or two. Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Batty?
Here.
Mr. David? Mr. Jessic? Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. McEnroth?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
He called me and told me he sounds real sick, so he won't be here.
Okay. Mr. Gary Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Steve Johnson?
Here.
Okay, the next item is the minutes of January 19th, 2016. Does anybody have any changes, additions to those minutes?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a comment on that on page 6 of 9, under the crosswalk safety article, third paragraph from the bottom, starts out Mr. Johnson, Oregon City Municipal Code. I think to make that sound more intelligible, it should say Mr. Johnson said that and then third line down where there's a comma and a or, cross those out and put at, and a couple words, a few words later where the word in, cross that out and put then at. And I would read, Mr. Johnson said that the Oregon City Municipal Code has a section on jaywalking states unlawful for any pedestrian crossing of the streets in the city at any other place than at a regular intersection.
I think it should, on that one, should say Gary instead of just Johnson.
I could say,
Says
unless you
Mr.
want to take
Johnson.
credit for it.
You're the one that,
Yeah,
you should get the credit for it.
Mr. Gary Johnson, I guess.
I missed the, after the at, any other place in a regular intersection in an area that would...
Yeah, replace the word in with the words than at. So it would read, cross any of the streets in the city at any other place than at a regular intersection.
Anybody else have anything? Okay.
I move to adopt.
Oh, yes. Motion to adopt, second? Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Agenda analysis, does anybody have anything they want to change in the agenda or add to it? Okay, that'll remain the same. Now we come to citizen comments. The first person will be Bill Daniels.
Is there two? I didn't know that. Oh, yeah. No, the county goes second.
And my name is Bill Daniels, a resident of McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. Lived here about 40 years or so. I came at the request of my neighborhood association to attend the meeting as an observer, which I'm delighted to do. I did have a question, though, for yourself or for staff. I had talked with Mr. Montalvo about coming to one of our neighborhood associations. In fact, the next one's coming up on March 3rd, and talk to us a little bit about pedestrian sidewalks, pedestrian crossings at sidewalks. And Mr. Montalvo told me that your group has covered some of that issue in issuing a priority list of...
No, not this group. It's the Transportation System Plan.
Very good.
Has a priority list for the pedestrian-activated rapid flashing beacons.
Here we are. And I'm wondering, is that possible for get a list of those intersections at some point in time?
Yeah. It's published in the TSP. There's an appendix for it, and there's actually a map that corresponds with it. I'll get that for you, though.
Very good. And Martin was going to speak also to us about what issues we might face in the McLaughlin neighborhood as far as pedestrian crossings on some of the main arterials in our neighborhood. And as you know, that most of the traffic that flows in Oregon City eventually comes through our neighborhood in one fashion or another. So we're interested in any pilot programs or possibilities of getting some of our crosswalks that currently have striping perhaps marked to let people know that there's people in those sidewalks and they must stop, that is the law. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm continued to be surprised at those flashing crosswalks, how so many people don't push the button to activate them. Both here by the library and down on 12th.
Crosswalks.
It's amazing.
Look at Oregon or Portland.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Okay, the next person to speak is Amy Wilhite.
Sarah. Yeah, we're getting, drop it down.
You are Rusty.
Hey now.
Yeah, watch out.
You gotta be here
No,
more
I don't
often.
remember. Good evening. My name is Amy Wilhite, and I am the chair of the Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association. And I have been asked to come and talk to you tonight about 4 areas that have constantly been brought up at our neighborhood meetings. I know that I've spoken to Martin and about most of them, so some of those will not be a surprise. I think 2 of them are new, but 2 of them are old. I was looking, and it looks like it's been 3 years since I sat before you and brought up an intersection that you guys handily took care of at Garden Meadows and Malala, and we're hoping for similar activity at our requests here. The first is the intersection of Highway 213, Glen Oak and Caulfield Road. The second one will be the intersection of Gaffney Lane and Malala Avenue. The intersection of Shardia's Drive and Malala Avenue. That might be one you're not familiar with. And First Street. The intersection at Highway 213, Glen Oak and Caulfield Road has been a topic of heated discussion for a long time. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but a light was put in coming from Glen Oak if you're taking a right-hand turn onto Malala Avenue. That was a dedicated turn. That was wonderful. However, the problem still lies if you're coming off of Caulfield Road. With the current light sequencing at that intersection, cars are unable to make a left-hand turn onto Highway 213 in a safe and timely manner. We are requesting adding a dedicated time for drivers to turn left onto Highway 213 from Caulfield Road. So if you're familiar with that intersection, here we are at Glen Oak, Caulfield. Coming off of Glen Oak, you know how busy that gets with the high school traffic. Looking at the peak traffic times in the morning and in the afternoon especially, at that intersection, they're just measured on Glen Oak, and they're in 2011 were 4,300 averaging, and in 2014 4,700. At the peak times, 521 in the morning and 406 in the afternoon. So you can imagine those are the cars coming and going on Glen Oak. While Caulfield will not have that many, with the addition, it shows Passage Parkway coming all the way out to Malala Highway 213, but it doesn't. It does not come out there. So all of the townhouses and building that has gone on down where by the pond, all of those cars filter out through Voyage onto Caulfield Road. And then at the end of Caulfield Road that you can't see, the road connects into the next subdivision. And cars coming out of that subdivision like to come onto Caulfield because at least there is a light. Otherwise, you're taking your life into your own hands without a light at all. So sitting at that intersection at Caulfield, I've watched, if you can get one car through turning left per light, you're lucky. Because the cars coming off of Glen Oak, obviously they're mostly turning right. Some are going straight, some are going left, but not very many of them will let you through. And so if you want to turn, you have to just get yourself out in the middle of the intersection, and then once it turns red, go. So, that's not legal. That's not what we're supposed to be doing, but that's the crux of the situation that's there. So we're asking, and we understand that the state controls that light, but hopefully we could get some help so that the people coming off of Glen Oak can go, and then the people from Caulfield can go. Just simply changing the light right there. You wouldn't need, it would just be a matter of timing the lights so that people turning from Glen Oak and Caulfield don't turn at the same time, just to allow those people on Caulfield. Because as it is right now, they're just stuck. The next intersection, a similar situation. However, it's a little bit more dangerous. At the intersection of Gaffney Lane and Molalla, so imagine you're coming either out of Fred Meyer or you're coming from Gaffney Lane there at Burgerville. With the current light sequencing, drivers are making left-hand turns coming both directions at the same time, and some are going straight, and it creates a very hazardous environment. At peak hours on Molalla Avenue at that intersection, in 2011 there were almost 14,000 cars going through that day a day, and in 2014 there was 14,600 cars. So that intersection is busy. Just coming from Gaffney alone, there's over 3,000 cars coming. So imagine the traffic. A lot of the pedestrians go to that light because the other intersections are a little more dangerous. So you have pedestrians coming, you have cars going both ways. So again, we're just asking for help, requesting that the rotation to the signal sequencing so that drivers coming out of Fred Meyer go at a separate time as the ones coming off of Gaffney Lane. So again, that would just be a matter of timing. It's not a change to lanes. That's been the big concern when we've brought up that intersection, is that there's not a way to change the lanes. So we're saying, okay, we understand that. Somewhere down the road, that's on the TSP, the dream to fix that intersection. But in the meantime, if we're stuck with what we have, I think a change to the lighting sequencing would take care of a lot of problems, frustrations, near misses that are happening at that intersection. Again, this is where we're talking about on Molalla Avenue at Gaffney Lane. The next intersection that we're concerned about is at Chartiers Drive and Molalla Avenue. You might not be as familiar with that intersection. I'll show it to you and then I'll go back. Oops. So Chartiers is, if you look up from where the arrow is pointing, you'll see Garden Meadows Drive. That's the crosswalk that you guys helped us take care of a while back. If you continue on the right is First Street, and continuing off of the map would be where Gaffney Lane and Fred Meyer's are. So Chartiers, on both sides of the road, there's a fence. So most people know, turn at the fence. That is used as a shortcut up to Gaffney Lane. So there's actually quite a bit of traffic that goes up Chartiers. There are currently no marked crosswalks at that intersection, and while all intersections are designated as a crosswalk, without marked crosswalks, the people are just dodging. There are bus stops on both sides of Molalla Avenue at that intersection.
Isn't this at the fire station?
It is south of the fire station.
Thank you.
Down with the mobile homes.
The intersection is used by both of the bus riders and pedestrians coming to and from OC Point. So if you're continuing south a little farther, you come to where FedEx and Panda Express, all of those stores are. From Garden Meadows to Highway 213, those are the only two crosswalks. So down Molalla Avenue and 7th, we have lots of ways to cross the street. But once you get up on the hill, up at Fred Meyer, the numbers of sidewalks start decreasing as you head towards 213. So we have a lot of pedestrians coming from Oregon City Point, as well as I said, they go up Chartiers to get to Gaffney Lane and Myers. The nearest crosswalks, again, are at Garden Meadows, which is at Wilco, and then at 213 in Molalla. So again, as I shared, there's over 14,000 cars going through the intersection there at Molalla and Gaffney, as well as at Molalla and 213. So all of those 14,000 trips are going by, and you're just dodging. Where, same thing at Garden Meadows where there's a crosswalk, but at least there's something to help, as we've watched people having to try to dodge around, and as more and more cars take that shortcut, they're not looking for pedestrians to be in that walkway. So we're requesting adding a marked crosswalk as well as signage there at the intersection of Chartiers Drive and Molalla Avenue. the fourth issue that we're bringing before you tonight is First Street. I don't know how many of you have driven First Street. There's currently, we feel, inadequate speed signage on First Street. There are only 2 25-mile-an-hour signs, and those are at each end of First Street. The sign at the entrance from Malala Avenue, I'll show you a picture of. It's partially obstructed by trees, and right now, as you know, there's no leaves on the trees. So it's obstructed by the branches at the moment. When the leaves are there, it's even worse. So you can't tell really, if you're coming off of Malala Avenue onto First Street, what the speed limit is. And as you come off of Malala Avenue onto First Street, there's a straightaway. And then after you get to, and it goes up a hill. As you get to the top of the hill, there's a stop sign, and then you start heading into the curved part of First Street before you get back to Beaver Creek. So people tend to see a straightaway, can't see the sign, and they're taken off. And there's Merrily Dance Studio. I believe I probably spelled it wrong. I don't have any kids going there. I apologize if it is. But the dance studio is right at almost at the top of the hill, and I'll show you pictures, but you have cars parking on both sides with kids going across. And really, again, if you're coming onto First Street, so where the green rectangles are, those are where the 2 current speed signs are. So at the top at Beaver Creek Road, there's one if you're coming in from Beaver Creek Road, and then at the bottom, if you're coming off of Malala Avenue, there is a 25-mile-an-hour sign there. So that straight stretch is actually a hill. Where the arrow pointing is, that's where the Merrily Dance Studio is. To the right of that is a big commercial building, and then you head towards the stop sign. That's a little farther. So,
Actually, can you go back?
Mhm.
Just to clarify, I think the arrow is pointed at Gleaners, and Merrily's Dance Studio
oh, it's over on the other side
is
of the
closer to the F.
F. I think you're right. Sorry.
But
Yeah, pretend the arrow's pointing towards
So-
the F.
yeah, you want signage near.
Yeah, I'll show you in the picture. You'll see what I'm. So this is, if you're sitting, yeah, see this is looking to the left there, you can see the white door. That's the dance studio. And on the right, you can see there's a stretch that's clear. This is one of the only places on that straight stretch where there aren't a lot of trees. So it makes perfect sense to me. What you have right behind that, if you were headed up that, is the Wilco building. And so right there at the edge of the Wilco building and where the no trees start, right in there seems to be a perfect place to just put a reminder speed sign. Coming on the, if you see the traffic coming, those are all cars coming towards us, and they were coming flying over the hill. At the top of that hill is this, a little bit farther is the stop sign. So they stop at the stop sign, you come over this hill, you see you're coming towards Malala Avenue, and you think, oh, I've got a straight stretch, and you haven't seen a speed sign since the entrance to First Street, so you have no idea what the speed is there. So here is a picture of the speed sign coming off of Malala Avenue, and you can see it's behind the tree there, and that's with the branches on it when it's fully in bloom. You've got that whole stretch. Where that truck is the edge of the Wilco building, so right beyond that would be a great place for the sign. And then at the top, you can see towards the top of the hill, there's a red car, and beyond that is the dance studio. So, yeah, again, I believe I did a better job here. That's where so again, at the edge of the Wilco building would be a great place for a 25-mile-an-hour sign. And then just past after you've come through the stop and you're headed into about to go down the hill would be another great place for a speed sign. So just, again, we have 4 requests tonight, helping us get an alter light sequencing at Caulfield and Malala, alter the light sequencing at Gaffney Lane and Malala, at a crosswalk at Chartiers Drive and Malala Avenue, signed and painted, and add speed signs on First Street. And I thank you, and if you have any questions for me. All right, thank you.
As usual, your presentations are complete and accurate. Very informative. I have one question about that stop signs that's obstructed.
The speed sign?
The 25, speed sign. would it be practical to just move that sign up to the clear area that she mentioned, and then we wouldn't have to worry about it ever being obstructed by the trees, and it would be visible?
I think that's a very good option. I'd probably leave it up to our street department to go out there and figure out, but it definitely looks obstructed right now, and
Yeah.
probably what's been suggested is probably a good idea.
And then the Glen Oak and Caulfield 213, of course, that's a ODOT issue. And I think,
Yeah.
it seems to me that that's been discussed before.
It's got a lot. There's a lot of history there, but I think looking at those every couple of years, we can communicate with. Actually, Martin's probably been communicating with ODOT more than I have recently on that one. But I know when I was operations manager at Signal, and the amount of traffic and the frustration there has always been pretty high. So, I think if we could work with ODOT, might even help our congestion problem at Beaver Creek and 213 if we can slow some of that traffic down that's coming into Oregon City and just kind of hold them back there a little bit. So I don't know. We'll work that angle. I don't know if ODOT will buy it, but
So they've
been pretty helpful.
They did make some improvements at that intersection when we first brought this up to them about a year and a half ago. So the first thing was bringing in a new controller and then adding that dedicated right-hand turn lane. So that was capital money that they had invested in there. So they did do what they could at the time. So the big thing was getting the new controller in because the old controller couldn't handle any more changes to that intersection. So we can talk to them to see if there's something further they can do. We had a discussion with them. Amy brought this up to me again like 6 months ago. I talked to Doug Anderson, who's the signals coordinator for ODOT, and right now, I've said this before, that's all the juice you're going to squeeze out of that lemon without investing some capital money into it. And that's something we can't force ODOT to invest capital funds based on a request from us. We can try and partner with them and see what we can do, but right now, there's not much more that they can do in terms of improvements. I'll touch base with Doug again tomorrow.
They can't, why is it, it's a capital thing to just change the sequence programming?
The capital they've already expended.
Yeah.
Now, if you go and change signal sequencing, typically you need to do a traffic analysis, which is several thousands of dollars, to figure out what's the impacts when you change the signaling here. Because remember, the entire system, that corridor, is projected to work or they're trying to make it all work sequentially. So when you make a change at one node, you have impacts at other nodes that have unintended consequences.
If that's the case, we should have never built the condos.
I think the right answer though right now is we just need to talk to ODOT. They're definitely pretty keen to that intersection and have.
I just hadn't heard this suggestion from me. I mean, we talked about it.
About split phasing?
Yeah. I mean, we had talked about it, but I didn't know.
Yeah, I followed up with Doug, and it's just right now, without investing some more.
If we're gonna continue the discussion, I'd like to have Amy come up to the speaker.
I think the
Why
main
don't we bring
point.
it back next month, and I can give you some definitive answers.
Yeah, I think the main point is I think the problem has been clearly depicted. So thank you for that, Amy. The question is just getting the right responses from ODOT on that for sure.
Wasn't 10 years ago, Caulfield was just a straight street down and was a dead end
Yeah,
and didn't have all the buildings down there.
that's right.
After all of the traffic north and south there has to go through there.
So again, if we're going to continue the conversation, we need to bring it up here. And I know you're on the docket to speak next, so we can ask the next speaker up.
On the Gaffney one and Moala, it strikes me that the Moala part is split phase. Can we do a split phase on Gaffney too and give the left turn people a chance to make a left turn?
I believe we can, but I'd like to speak to that next month.
Okay.
I have a question. What about doing some speed markings on the pavement, like 25 miles? So even the trees are growing and stuff. At least,
fur?
Yeah.
So we have done a lot of work to avoid those because they're very expensive to put down and then they wear out. So if you notice what we've done with our crosswalks is we've been using the I always confuse this. Is it the Continentals that we're using that have, so used to be our crosswalks were striped across the travel lanes so that you'd have, the 2 bars on either side that would identify where the pedestrian was to go. We've changed those to Continentals, and we've even spaced them such that for the most part we try and get them to land right in the wheel path so that we're not spending the money to replace those as often. That's true for the pavement markings as well, for putting pavement markings that say a speed limit sign.
25 miles or something.
25 miles an hour. We don't have those, and we've worked pretty hard to avoid them just because of the cost of replacement. So
it was just a suggestion. I mean,
yeah.
That's fine if you
Yeah, yeah, a good suggestion. We just, and it's a tool. It's just one that we'd rather avoid. Once we do it one place, I know what will happen after that.
That's why I said sign.
You can't put paint down until summer practically because it's wet and won't dry.
Yeah, those probably would be thermoplastic, and that's why they get really expensive. That thermoplastic is costly. But yeah, so that's a good suggestion. Just managing
That's
our
a can of
striping
worms.
cost is a big one. It's like those. We use those Sharrows. They have a bicycle with the double arrows, and they're usually to represent that bikes and cars go in the same travel lane. We did some on Main Street. They were worn out pretty quickly, and they need to be replaced. They're also I think they're on the 43 bridge. You see them around from places, and they make good sense, but and that's the only solution because there isn't necessarily a signing option for that. So we do those, but they're costly. We probably spend $800 to $1,000 on each one of those, assuming that doesn't include, a fair amount of traffic control just to get out there and get it down, heated, and burned into place. So, yeah, we think about those things too. We want to get as much value for our citizens as we can, but still keep it safe. But on all these issues, again, I think they deserve some thought, and before we just kind of blurt out responses that might send the wrong message that we're not interested in doing something, because we are.
We'll be back next
Okay.
week then.
Okay.
Next month.
We have another citizen comment from Robert Heiberg.
Yes. I'm going to talk about Caulfield Road. I moved here about 7 or 8 years ago. Before they built...
Sir, could you please state your name for the record into the mic?
Oh, Robert Heiberg, 14107 Caulfield Road. I moved here before they built the condominiums and
Speak into the mic.
Oh, you can't hear me?
They can't hear you over the TV set because our controller is broke.
Anyway, bottom line is that we had very little traffic there. The people from the housing project one road south of us came out in the morning because they couldn't turn left on 213 with that traffic. Now you've added another 96 units. The road is basically almost rubble. You're taking in $20 million a year in assessed valuation. I'm sure there's some taxes for Oregon City. And if you don't do something with that road, it's going to go away. I'm sure your pothole crew is well familiar with it. And I looked at your plan through 2035 for upgrades, and you've absolutely said you're going to do nothing to Caulfield Road. By that time, it'll be a gravel road. So you need to think about that. You need to think about the fact that you wanted that $20 million of capital investment and taxes for Oregon City, and yet haven't done anything to repair that road. It's ridiculous. It is. You might be able to do a chip seal, but it probably wouldn't last more than 5 or 10 years. The only other thing would be a grind and repave, which would be a whole new road. I don't think your little mini grinder and mini paver with a 2-foot strips would do much good. I mean, you could go in there and put in 2 lanes going westbound and 2 lanes going eastbound, and that would probably delay having to redo it, but it's really in bad shape. Last year you did a mini grind on the South End Road just because you had some water things, then I think you could have spent your money a lot better on Caulfield than South End. That's just my opinion. The other thing is, I'm hoping if they put in a new controller for the right turn lane on Caulfield, there's enough space for a controller for a left turn lane, because there is enough room at the intersection for a left turn lane. And what would happen there is if they did that, you'd do both left and right turn at the same time. And right now, I listen to the traffic go by in the morning, and there's a car going by every 20 or 30 seconds. I don't know how they get through that intersection. Thank God I'm retired. I don't have to do it. But anyway, that's my 2 bits. But you really need to think about that, because that road isn't going to stay around very long. I was in the construction business for 46 years, and I have a pretty good idea what it takes to get things done, or what needs to be done. And I realize it's all money, but the bottom line is that if you don't do something with it, you just aren't going to have a road. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is new business, the Clackamas County presentation on signalization.
Yeah, Christian, you want to step up? I know Martin had to take a call from our on-call person, so I'm hoping there's nothing major out there. But I think he wanted to introduce Christian, but I'm going to go ahead and take a stab at that. Christian's been with the county for as long as I can recall. He's been a signal technician and signal designer.
5 years.
5 years? Okay, so it's been a while. He's done a lot of good work for Oregon City. He does, along with their other signal maintenance team, does work for most of the cities in the county. Their signal group is an awesome group of people to work with, and they've done some good work for us. And so what I understood was going to be presented was just kind of an update on what the county and the city have been working together on for signalization, signal upgrades in Oregon City.
That sounds about right.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
I wasn't exactly sure. So I told them before this that it's been a while since I've seen exactly what we've been up to, so I was looking forward to learning something myself.
PowerPoint crashed.
Oh.
So.
So I'll just wing it, right?
Yeah.
No, it's up, back up. Let's see.
There we go. Good evening. Are we ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Christian Snuffin. I'm a traffic engineer with Clackamas County. I think I saw on an agenda item that they called me the traffic engineer. That is not my title. That's reserved for my supervisor, Joe Merrick, who is the county traffic engineer, but I work on his team. So I'd like to talk to you about, just really briefly, 3,000-foot overview of the Oregon City signal system, our maintenance agreement, and plans for upgrades for the signal system. So there's a lot of information, and hopefully, you'll stay with me. Okay, so just looking ahead, what I'm going to talk about, I would like to talk about what we do for the city and with the city, how we partner, and just very briefly the contractual framework for our work, which is an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement. We'd like to talk about, to give you a context, an idea of what we manage, talk about the number of assets and the type of assets that we manage countywide, including Oregon City. And then also, I want to talk about new technologies and advances and upgrades that we're currently working on for the Oregon City signal infrastructure system and also the county system as a whole. So hopefully when we're done with this, you'll have a better understanding of how these assets fit into the overall transportation picture in your community, and how possibly get you thinking about how some new technologies might benefit the city. And then maybe there'll be time for some questions if you have any. So this is an overview of what we manage. Over 120 signals, traffic signals, school zone flashers, radar speed signs. We have weather stations. We have pan-tilt zoom cameras with closed circuit capabilities, so we can view and monitor intersections. We have over 20 of those, none in Oregon City yet. So, and we have lots of fiber optics communications networks, and I guess also electric systems on the county ferry. That's not something that or the Canby ferry. That's not something I deal with directly, but our signal electricians do. So again, for some context, Oregon City, these are the cities that we manage traffic signals for, including maintenance and operations support. Lake Oswego is not on there. Lake Oswego is the only one that's bigger than Oregon City. They have 32 traffic signals, and we do help them out, but not in the same way as with Oregon City and the other cities in the county. We're much more closely, we work with you much more closely than we do Lake Oswego. They have their own staff. But as you can see, Oregon City is a big one, 28 traffic signals, a bunch of school zone flashers, and some new rapid rectangular flashing beacons, those RRFBs, those strobe lights at the pedestrian crossings. So those are becoming much more popular. Just really briefly, the IGA, there's an intergovernmental agreement between the county and the city. It's very old. It's from 1990. So I know the road maintenance shop is interested in updating the IGA. So there have been a lot of changes in signal systems since that's been written. So look for that. Look for an update to be, that process to be started soon. So this shows you we have traffic signal electricians who are the people who actually make things work, and then the traffic engineering who provides operations, signal timing, and a level of technical support. So what you get for your money is on an annual basis, the traffic signal electricians do annual inspections where they look at the aerial equipment, they look at the equipment in the controller cabinet, the detection, and just make sure everything's running, operating smoothly and as it should. They repair for call-outs, they do graffiti removal, utility locates, and other maintenance as noted there.
What is a Friday surprise?
This is the Friday surprise. So this is something that I think it happened about 3 years ago. Not on the Oregon City. This was at Johnson Creek and Bell.
Our Friday surprise happened at 15th in Washington.
That
was a Friday surprise.
What, did that get hit?
Yeah, I remember that the whole control box just got plowed out.
Okay.
I don't remember that one.
Darn it. Okay.
It's always I'll call my mailbox a Friday surprise.
Yeah.
It's always on Friday. And
I think everybody understands what a Friday surprise is.
So this is
a holiday surprise.
This is a very good example of what our crews do. They work very hard. This was a Memorial Day weekend, and that was their weekend, replacing all the brains for that signal, which was brand new. We just upgraded it, so it's a
Cost.
what?
What's the cost?
Oh boy.
We wound up spending close to $35,000 for 15th in Washington.
Yeah. This was costly. There was a pan tilt zoom camera there, CCTV camera, so that needed to be replaced also. The cabinet was just completely totaled. So
Do you insure those in any way?
I'm sure they are. I don't know how that works, but
We have to, John, just so you know, every asset that's insured now, the insurance used to be a little different. It was just kind of blanket coverage, and something would happen, and the insurance company would cover that. If it's not on the list, and I think all of our signals are, the insurance company won't cover that. So, but hopefully we find the driver. I don't know. That always helps.
He didn't drive away from this.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was. I don't think he was seriously injured, but it was a drunk driver on a Thursday or Friday night.
We did find, we had a responsible party, and we recouped our costs. But the thing you have to remember with that is, we never see that money back, not that fiscal year. It's money we have to expend out of our bottom line. It's seen as revenue, and then that money gets reprogrammed back into the transportation budget on the next budget cycle.
I apologize for the animations. I tried to take all the animations out, but apparently some of them are there still. I didn't mention that these 120 signals that I mentioned are excluding ODOT. So there are a lot of other signals in Oregon City that are ODOT managed signals, as your previous speaker spoke of. So these are just the county and city signals. So in addition to the signal mast arm, the signal heads, the signal controller cabinet that you're familiar with, there is detection. This is something that's a little less visible, aspect of the signal system, but they're definitely important. Just really briefly, I want to go over the 3 types of detection: loops, radar, and video. Loops are the gold standard, pretty much. They're the most common, and they're quite reliable, relatively inexpensive. You see those all over. They're predominant. They're the predominant detection type in Oregon City. New type of detection is radar. I believe the city has one or at least one, maybe one intersection.
One intersection, 2 directions.
2 directions. It's Abernathy and 17th in Washington.
Abernathy and Washington.
Abernathy, Washington. Great. Yep. And so those work great. County is very excited about radar. We're starting to use them more and more. They're very unobtrusive, and they work very well. So we're very pleased.
The only problem is if you have a pacemaker and you drive through there, you feel a little bit of a flutter. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Got to tell you, Martin, I haven't felt it.
Just kidding.
And
how do they pick up the bikes?
They have their ways.
Because I was looking at your loops before and how you were showing the laying the bike down,
lay your bike down.
different tricks to kind of get that to happen.
Yes, radar is getting much better about picking up bikes. Nowadays, that's a matter of course. It's a basic criteria. It needs to be able to pick up bikes. Which is an issue that we often have with video, which is a 3rd type of detection. You have a number of intersections that are running video detection. They're not so great with bikes. We're generally phasing them out, but you may see this type of detection at city intersections. So that's just a very quick overview. So some projects that we've done for and with Oregon City. As many of you have seen, we have flashing yellow arrow conversions. We've pretty much completed the upgrade of the intersections that are to be upgraded to flashing yellow arrows. There are 1 or 2 that are potential candidate intersections. The intersection of Molalla and Holmes-Hilda has an outdated, old-style 5-section signal head for left turns, and that is a potential candidate for flashing yellow arrow. But pretty much the flashing yellow arrow conversion is complete. Traffic signal controller upgrades.
Oh, no, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Traffic signal controller upgrades, we are working with the county or with the city to take out the old controllers, basically the computer, reprogram a new controller and get it installed. The benefit there is a lot more functionality and capabilities and versatility with the new controllers. So we're nearly complete. We expect to have all of the Oregon City traffic signals upgraded to the new controller type in another 2 or 3 months.
So we talked about this a couple meetings ago. This is not an insignificant project. There are 13 different controllers that Christian and his team are transitioning over for us. We've been working on this for about 4 or 5 months now.
About,
yeah. And this all came about when we got the original request for the improvements at Gaffney. And for any of the improvements that people have been asking about, we have to go to these new controllers. It gives us another level of functionality, which I think Christian will go to. So this transition for these 13 lights, it's excess of $40,000 when it's all said and done. And that's not even counting, what we have to put under the table for Christian to get it done. So, yeah,
it's a fairly good effort, good sized effort. Don't really need school zone flashers. I do want to come back to the traffic signal controller upgrades, but there are school zone flashers. The old communication system for the school zone flashers are are out of date. The company is no longer supporting that, so we're looking at upgrading those countywide. We haven't specifically worked with Oregon City or I haven't worked with Martin or John broach that topic, but that's something possibly on the horizon to update those. And fiber optics, lots of opportunities for communications. So getting back to the signal controller upgrades, we have a few remaining. They're called 170 type controllers. These are running 20-year-old, 25-year-old technology. They're very, very old computers. They don't have, they're pretty basic. The new 2070 controllers provide a lot more bells and whistles in terms of what you can do with the traffic signals, smart timing, programming capabilities, and even these computers are not very complicated, compared to what you have in your pocket, your iPhone or whatever. These are pretty basic, but they still give us a lot more capabilities. What we do to retime the signals, or what I'm doing, is I'm looking at a lot of the timing parameters, optimizing them for safety, operational efficiency, making sure they comply with the federal, state, and county standards and rules and whatnot. We're looking at operational aspects. Are there ways we can squeeze out a little bit more efficiency? And they have some advanced features. So specifically with the flashing yellow arrows, there's some examples of what we can do with flashing yellow arrows to enhance safety.
Before we move on, the last two things are performance logging. So are they collecting data that you then analyze?
Yeah.
And then the fiber optics, are they like all of them connected with fiber optics to a central office so you can watch them?
Yeah, and I will touch on that.
There.
It requires a lot of the capabilities of these new controllers really require a good, solid communications network, and that's where the fiber optics comes in. So, and that's where there are lots of opportunities in the city, because a lot of the signals are not connected to any type of network, or they have old like dial-up modem connections, like the type you access the internet in 1996. So yeah, I will get to that. So what we're referring to about central signal system controlled is generally referred to ITS. Maybe some of you have heard of that, intelligent transportation systems. I don't want to get too deep into this, but it basically, as you can read it uses advanced technology to enhance safety and operations. And yeah, maybe I'll move on from that.
I have a question. Is some of these new signals or the smart fiber connected signals, is that data somehow accessible by these applications like mapping and stuff? They give you traffic.
Yes, it can be. Once you have the central system set up, you have the infrastructure in place, you've established the communications, and you have a central network or a central software system, then yes, you can do a lot of things, such as monitoring traffic volumes. You can monitor. What was your specific question?
Just like when you go in and it says travel or time to destination 25 minutes or changes. Is that predicted based on those signals or traffic volumes?
That's a good question, and there's a good distinction. That's actually, if you're talking about Google Maps or Waze or one of these smartphone apps, those are based on user data, using like people on their phones, and it's great. It's crowdsourced data, people on the roadways. So there are future opportunities where there may be integration with those smartphone apps and signal controllers. I mean, this is the brave new world of signal control. We're not there yet, but I've attended a number of presentations and seminars where people are saying, hey, this is coming. So there's a lot of advanced technology, smart people thinking about ways to deal with traffic congestion without building more roads, just trying to eke out more efficiency out of the existing signals. Yeah. So, getting back to the central signal system, this is something that we do have. We do have a central signal system. We have a traffic operations system at the county, and we can talk to all of the signals that are on the network. There are 4 or 5 in Oregon City that we can talk to, which isn't bad. Better than Milwaukee, not as good as Wilsonville. So, yeah, 4 traffic signals in Oregon City are connected. So if there is a fiber optic or copper wire connection to the traffic signal, they are connected, and they're part of our central management system. This is just a picture. This is a picture of our TOC, our Traffic Operations Center. We have a big screen where we can display real-time information from traffic signals. This just shows you the software we use, and I think that's an intersection on Sunnyside. Yeah.
So as you plan your staff availability over a year or multi-years, and you allocate time to the various cities, could a city assess its property owners for the specific purpose of jump-starting that so they could get all of that new traffic technology in place to make traffic flow better in that city if they came up with more money?
Yeah, I think this is really a question for the city. But
Yeah, and I think the answer is, yeah, we could prioritize a little differently. This year we actually prioritized for ITS improvements, and then I think the county came to us and said, "Hey, by the way, we're upgrading. We're going for it now. We want to upgrade all these controllers." And we said, "Oh, okay, so we can't do both then this budget year, but we could allocate more budget towards these programs and move that forward more quickly."
So specifically, we have $50,000 set in place to do a signals master plan for this year. At the beginning of the fiscal year, Christian and Bikram at the county came and told us that these controllers that are running the majority of your signals, they have to be replaced. The support for them, there's basically one laptop left, correct?
yeah,
There's one laptop left at the county that will still communicate with these controllers.
barely.
And the communication is very, sketchy. So in order for us to continue servicing the controllers, you need to upgrade. That consumed the majority of what we had outlined for a signals master plan. The upside is we're going to get new controllers at each of these signals and gives us a little bit more capability. So what we have left is a little less than $10,000. And with that, we were going to take a look at trying to prioritize what are the next steps after you've replaced the controllers. And we've already got a scope and fee from one of the local engineering firms to help us with that. And Christian and Bikram have committed to helping us with that process so we can come up with what are the next steps.
Perhaps fantasizing if you could quantify an overall traffic improvement, I'll use a number, 25%, if you invested $600,000 and brought all of the control and communication device up to date, can you predict that you could get like a 25% improvement? Because if you could connect the two, you might be able to special assess the community as a whole one way or another. Just because you don't have to make new roads, you're getting that improvement throughout the city just by upgrading the technology.
I think to get to that, whatever the number is, 25% increase or whatever, or the cost, it would require more of a master plan and needs assessment of our system. How it would, I think the harder part, so we can get to the dollar amount of what it's going to cost to do all those things. How much efficiency you would eke out of that, I think, would require a lot more work. And
like I said, I'm fantasizing out there.
Yeah.
But isn't
fun
the
to
goal?
fantasize.
Isn't the goal to have them talk to each other? I mean,
Yeah.
anyways, that's the investment you have to make, regardless what your signal master plan tells you.
Right.
You would have to connect them regardless, right?
Right, but how to do that right, how to do it in using the right fiber, where those conduits are, which signal control cabinets have it, which are aligned with, I think most of our fibers along Malala right now. Just looking at all those deficiencies would, to me, I'm not talking a master plan like a transportation system plan, but at least a guidance document that's pretty focused on our signal needs, yeah.
There is a strong movement towards performance measures and asset management, or performance measures as a element of a asset management plan for signal and ITS assets. So we're not there yet, but what the new controllers and this new technology allow us to do is to better quantify operations rather than what's going on out here. We have the opportunity, the ability to get much more data from about what's going on, and so there's a start with that in terms of quantifying what kind of benefits you're getting.
I think you said some of the traffic signals in town are the states and some are the counties and cities. So are you able to cooperate with the state as easily as you can between the city and the county, or is that another whole ball game?
I'm personally, I know Doug Anderson. I've known him for many years. So the county has a very good working relationship with the ODOT traffic signal manager. So, and I have on a number of cases worked with him to update timings on the state system. So that works better with the county system. And I mean, our offices are in the city, so I'm driving city streets all the time, and if something's like, oh man, Doug, can you work on this? Can you look at this one? So we've done that I've done that more than one time.
Knowing that the state has an objective to move state highway traffic, and the side streets have, important to them as well, but they're secondary to moving state highway traffic.
He has made some recent improvements to the intersection of Beaver Creek and 213, specifically that dual left when you're coming, which direction is it? Is it eastbound towards Maple Lane, except you're taking a left to go northbound on 213. So during the critical PM peak time, as I've noticed from driving it, there is more time. He reallocated some timing, so I think there have been some recent improvements there. So it's possible. It's possible.
One question.
Sure.
These new controllers, can they look at the line voltage raise if a bulb went out?
I'm sorry?
Like when a light goes out, bulb burns out. Can the computer detect a line voltage saying, hey, we got a bad light?
I'm not a signal electrician, but there is a conflict monitor. There are monitors. These signals are designed to be fail-safe. So if something goes wrong, they get a wrong signal from the controller, it'll go into flash. It'll say, nope, that's not right. It goes into flash.
So if the red light went out?
In terms of the light going out, I think we monitor the green. I want to say we just monitor the green lights, so I think if a green goes out, it might go into flash. I don't quote me on that. That would be a question for signal electricians.
I just wondered.
Yeah.
Be automated. They got a light out on Malone Avenue.
They do right now.
I know. I say if one went out,
I'll give you my card. Let me know.
I call PG when the street lights are out.
Yeah.
Christian's heart to flutter for a second there.
I think most of the lights are LED now anyway.
Yeah, they last for a pretty long time, but definitely we pretty quickly get calls. We find out pretty soon, and it's usually from citizens who just call and say, "Hey, there's a light out." And so, and I would encourage you also to just report it if you see it. So back to the presentation, we have the TOC, the Traffic Operations Center. There's a picture of it. And I did allude to the CCTV cameras earlier. This is just another example. This really helps for monitoring intersections. You can see a picture of the camera. We can control, like from my desktop, when there's good communication, I can, on my computer screen, control zoom, move around, and watch what's going on. And that's super helpful. I've gotten calls from people complaining about something not working right, and I can sit there at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and just watch it from my desk. And it's a lot more efficient than having to go out there. There are none yet in Oregon City. We maintain about 15 to 20 cameras, but none in Oregon City yet. Here's an example of the type of image that you can see from, this is 93rd and Sunnyside. So this is a problem area sometimes, as you probably know. Incident response is another thing. Quick detection and monitoring of incidents. This is a crash that was at Sunnyside, so we can check things out.
Christian, are you guys recording with that CCTV as well, or
No.
no?
Yeah, we
there's several privacy issues. Wasn't sure.
Well, there are privacy issues. It is possible, but we do not. We have the ability to record, and we have for traffic study purposes. If we want to observe traffic conditions for some period of time, where we're not just going to sit in the office and watch it the whole time, we record it, and then we'll come back and we can watch the video. But we don't record as a matter of, on an ongoing basis.
Are those cameras a fixed view, or can they be turned?
They can be turned. They can be rotated 360 degrees. They can be zoomed to a really remarkable level of resolution. So we can, if you place them strategically, sometimes you can see the next intersection that may be 1,000, 2,000 feet away, and you can get pretty good visibility. And you can see along a corridor, you can watch the whole corridor. And that's about the end. This is a picture. No, this is the end. This is a picture. The green signals are those in Oregon City that are connected to the network that we can monitor and watch. The blue ones are not. So that's kind of an overall view. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, could I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
You have your interlocal agreement with Oregon City. Does Oregon City pay 100% of the cost for all the work you do on their signals?
I believe that's the case. Yeah.
Okay, and then
It is a significant monthly bill.
I don't know what that amount is.
I do. It's a significant monthly bill.
He writes the check.
Yeah. Thank you, Martin.
and then you have some more signals that are operated by the state. Is that the same agreement, or does the state pay for those?
Those are state funded.
Okay.
And they own those signals. The MOU with the county is for them to service our signals on city roads.
Okay. Another question I had, are there any signals in Clackamas County that have emergency vehicle preemption?
Yes, they all do. All of your signals in the city and all of the signals that we maintain have emergency vehicle preemption on all of the approaches.
Okay.
And that's tested annually. It is strictly for fire vehicles, though. So police and ambulance are not supposed to have the emitters. It's only the fire vehicles by law, or by, I'll just say it's by law.
And TriMet doesn't have it yet either.
Well, there is bus priority, something called bus priority that's used in some cities in the metro area, namely Portland. We do not do bus priority in Clackamas County. We do not have any places where that's done yet. We could.
And another question I had was about all the signals I see at the intersections just have the heads on either mast arm or span wire. Do you have any intersections with near side heads? The reason that came up is that yesterday I was driving home, and in the rear occurrence the sun was out, and the sun was positioned just between both heads on the span wire. So it was hard to see when it turned green. I was thinking if it had a side-mounted head, I could have looked at that.
A number of signals, I can't tell you how many in Oregon City have near side heads, but it's typically done for road curvature. If you're coming into a signal, maybe it's right around the corner, but they put an advanced head so you can see what you're approaching. I'm not aware of that situation.
We have one that I'm aware of, and it's at 2nd and 99, and it's basically a repeater, so that when you're offset coming in from that curve, turn onto 99, you can see what the signal head that's perpendicular to the intersection, what that's indicated.
And that's
I don't know
done
any
in,
others, top of my head.
I can't think of any, but that doesn't mean they don't exist.
Another question I had was, you have a list of signals that are warranted, but you haven't built yet because funds aren't available?
That would be a question for Martin or John, probably from the TSP.
What was the question? The signals that haven't been built?
Are there signals that are warranted but haven't been built because of a lack of funding?
Oh. I know the TSP has suggestions for locations with signals, but not that I don't know of those that are warranted that haven't been built.
Okay.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah, there's nothing in the GIS specifically for signal installations. There's transportation improvements that might incorporate a signal component to it, but there's nothing off the top of my head that I can find right here.
And my last question is, do you ever give tours of your traffic operations center, like to groups like the Oregon City TAC?
Sure, that would be great. I do. We do. And this is actually a great opportunity. We haven't actually done this very much, is speak to the cities. So yeah, I'm happy to share. Let me know. I'll leave some cards here.
Okay.
That was my question.
Where's your office?
I would be very interested in taking a tour of that. Would anybody else like to?
Yeah, definitely.
So, Kathy, could you pass this on to Lisa, maybe to work something out for a tour of their traffic operations center for us?
It's right up at Red Soils. We're close by.
Yeah, so that'd be pretty neat. Looks like a pretty neat operation.
I like it.
I have a question about the signals on Malala. At certain times of the day when you're driving up the Malala, there's signal and sun is just hitting it right. You can't see those signals. It's almost impossible. I mean, a couple times I was just like going through and hoping that it's green. I mean, you're at the angle and you just can't see it.
It happens on Washington too. In the afternoon, coming up at about 3 o'clock.
Yeah, it's definitely not an uncommon problem. There are places where that certain time of the year, that certain time of the day, certain weather conditions, you're getting the sun right there.
Takes us back to our offset heads.
Yeah, well, it could. I think that the new LED signal indicator heads are a lot more. They're better than the incandescent.
They're better than the old ones, but the sun still outshines them.
Sure. And I would just advise driving for the conditions.
At a different time, huh?
Maybe.
Well, I was wondering, is there a way, they're up high, but if they were down lower, mounted on kind of on the side, you could also see it that way. Versus sticking up and versus your car is down here and you're looking up.
There are, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, there are standards for design for mounting height. The bottom of the signal head, I want to say, is minimum 19 feet. So sometimes you have roadway geometry situations where you're going to encounter that. There are treatments to enhance visibility of signal heads. Like a yellow reflective strip around the outside of the back plate is something that's done for enhanced visibility. So that might be that's a really low cost treatment. Anytime you're talking about adding a signal head, you're talking about several thousands of dollars of engineering study and contractor time or county time to actually install the device. But I would first be looking at other visibility, low cost visibility enhancement measures. I mean, without knowing the specifics of the signal, that's kind of where I would go first.
Two quick questions. And I thought about it when I saw you list the cities and the number of lights, and this emphasizes that. It's interesting. West Lynn has one. And
new. They didn't used to have any.
Well, and so is it just the difference that we're saddled with a lot of through traffic and they're not? Or why do they have one and we have all of these lights?
West Lynn is think it's, you do have 213, you do have Malala, you have some high volume major arterials, Beaver Creek Road. Most of the signals are on basically Malala, Beaver Creek, and 213.
And the Malala Washington signals are mostly inherited from ODOT when that was 213.
The traffic, if you're suggesting that we've got more traffic in Oregon City than West Linn, you'd be right. I mean, West Linn's pretty much a bedroom community with really that intersection that's there is, I'm sure it meets signal warrants, but barely, and there's just not a lot of through traffic in West Linn, aside from 43, which is ODOT signals.
The other question was, what is the total contract per year between the city and the county in terms of dollar amount? What is that roughly each year?
I don't recall.
Give me 5 minutes.
Pardon me?
Give me 5 minutes.
Okay, sure.
I gotta bring up the
While he's looking at that, I've got one.
report.
And it's fairly specific to one particular item you mentioned, the Malala Avenue and Holmes Hilda intersection. We talked about upgrading that to the flashing yellow. What is going to be gains? Like, I use that intersection left turning from either of those streets onto 213, and I don't see where it's a problem the way it is currently.
There's data to show that the doghouse, you're familiar, I want to make sure that we're talking about, understand what I'm talking about, the doghouse, that wide traffic signal for the left turns with the two, the one red and then the two yellow and the two green, one side isn't, so it's 5-section, that those have higher incidence of crashes. Those are considered not the safest type of signal head when compared to a flashing yellow arrow. So there is data to show the flashing yellow arrows are significantly safer than those dog houses, is what we call them. So we are moving to phase those out. And all agencies in the state are moving to phase those out. Although the priority levels vary. There's still a lot of them out there.
Okay, so it is a safety concern rather than a traffic.
It is absolutely a safety concern.
All right.
Yeah. So.
Christian, I've got one question too. When PGE did all our LED street light upgrades, we did that citywide. Along most of our boulevards, we've also got street lights that are attached at each of the intersections that are all they're attached to the signals. And at the time, the county hadn't made a determination about LED lights for those signals, so I think that's still the case. We've got the old high-pressure sodium at each intersection, and it'd be nice to upgrade those as well. Has the county made a determination on what kind of LED they'd be willing to go to? Do you know?
I believe we are using LEDs. I'm speaking a little out of my expertise. I'd have to get back to you on that.
That'd be good. I'm curious. I don't know if you guys have talked about it, but I know it's still been on my list of things that just to have consistency with the lighting color would be good.
So the annual signals budget is $60,000. Last year we overspent that budget by about 15%. It really just depends on what the annual demand is, and, what we got to replace that we hadn't been planning for.
That's just regular.
That's the monthly maintenance is $60,000 for the year.
Like this controller upgrade project, that's in addition to that.
Yeah, that was CIP money that we had set aside for the controller upgrade. So when we have a signal cabinet that gets wiped out by a driver, that money comes out of that $60,000, which is why we went over last year. And then I have to wait until a subsequent budget cycle, or we have to do a BA, trying to recoup the money that gets reimbursed by the insurer.
I think that's a screaming deal.
Yeah.
I guess you and I will have to have a talk. Martin, you'll have to explain that economic to me, because I can't understand. If you get reimbursed from an insurance company, how could your costs be moved over into the next fiscal cycle?
So any money that comes in as a reimbursement is looked as revenue. And again, the best people to answer this is Wyatt or Myria.
But the way it's been explained to me is it's revenue and it sits in a pot until that money gets allocated at a next subsequent budget cycle. It's not something that you can say, just reimburse me for my expenses. It sits in that pot as revenue until it gets dispersed out through the budget process. In order for us to recoup those funds, if we had a major expenditure that was reimbursed by an insurer, we could do it, but I'd have to prepare a budget amendment that has to go through the entire budget process to bring those funds back into the active fiscal year.
We don't lose the money, Bob. It's just
It sits and
it's
waits.
really the revenues just are bigger, but we don't have any authority to spend that money until we get a budget
Yeah.
amendment.
Well, that explains it to me. It's a little strange, but excuse me. It's government, so it works.
It's not like your household checkbook.
That's
You
right.
Just
That's for
spend
sure.
whatever you got in there.
It's a lot bigger than my household.
All right.
Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question from the audience, a real quick one.
Would you come up to the...
Yes. My name is Bill Daniels, McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and I know I work for the City of Portland Parks, and City of Portland on their public works also have, and this city will have that problem eventually, of graffiti, and I noticed on his that the electricians are responsible for taking the graffiti off the boxes, which seems like a waste of their time. And in Portland, what worked was the neighborhood associations were allowed to use the same color of paint as the boxes, the signal boxes, so that they all were standardized. And the quickest way to get rid of graffiti is not to erase it, but to paint over it. And I'm wondering if there's, at some point in time, if that becomes a problem, we could go through Public Works at CIC, but I think most of us would agree that we don't want graffiti in our neighborhoods, and certainly McLaughlin has a lot of arterials where that seems to be where it showed where most of the boxes are at. But I'm curious if there was a avenue through the county and with Public Works that would be allowed to have neighborhoods be able to eradicate graffiti as soon as it appears, not days or weeks or months later. And that worked in Portland. So that was just my comment and a question, perhaps, if there was a memorandum of understanding or an agreement that was put forth by the city to help the county keep up on the graffiti on these boxes as they come. Again, we're lucky so far, but if you live in Portland, you'll know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Nice suggestion. I don't know if does the electrician actually remove the graffiti? Is that how it goes? Or is it more like a maintenance kind of thing that just comes up and maybe we deal with it or maybe you guys deal with it as the...
Most of our cabinets are stainless.
But they're painted.
They're painted, yeah. I think it's in the course of regular maintenance. It's part of what I understand that our electricians do.
When they're in the cabinet.
Maybe something that could be worked out in the new contract or MOU that is developed.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having
It
me.
was very informative.
This was fun. Thank you.
And we'll look forward to that tour.
Okay. I'll leave some cards. Well, Martin,
I've got it.
I would like to say something.
Yes.
Amy informed me of something. I found out from you guys, and you're not responsible for the maintenance of Caulfield Road. She says Clackamas County is, and that's one of the few city streets that still is under the purview of the county. So we'll have to go after.
So you'll have to go to a county commission.
And that's probably why it hasn't been taken care of. And I'm just wondering who's fixing the potholes. Probably your crews. You need to send them a bill.
Yeah, I want. That's one of the things that I wasn't recollecting off the top of my head. But yeah, so there's some things about Caulfield that are complex. That's one of them. So we'll try to respond better next month.
I'll respond to the county. I'm going to find out why it hasn't been fixed. It's ridiculous.
Okay, the next item is 5B, the Public Works Report.
I just have a couple items. I wanted to mention to you that we're still making progress on our Drive Safe Oregon City campaign. Lisa's been busy trying to find pricing and working with B&B Leasing on the sticker, specific to the sticker. And we have found a local vendor, and we've looked beyond local for pricing that would fit our budget a little better because of the type of sticker and the size of sticker that we want. Fairly expensive. We've upped the order size to 1,500 stickers so that we could get all 3 of the art pieces in a sticker form, so that we would have a good inventory of those stickers. And we have one problem with our logo and one of the graphics that we're trying to work through with our artists to get fixed before we send those to press. B&B Leasing has stepped up in a big way. The stickers, and I didn't bring my numbers, but I want to say they were like $5 and
About 5.5.
Was it 5.5? Yeah, I can't remember the exact number, but over $5 per sticker. So 1,500 of those adds up pretty quick. But B&B Leasing was interested in sponsoring 50% of that cost. We have some money in our budget to cover the remainder of that. So that's still the plan. We're still moving forward with that. I hope we can get those ordered relatively quickly. If we can't get our graphic fixed right away, we'll move forward with a similar graphic and get it done. But the idea would be to get that order in place and get them printed up and available, and again start with the McLaughlin neighborhood and see how they work out some of their distribution pieces. I think they've got some ideas there and are ready to hit that process hard. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, Bill, but they're counting on you to deliver these stickers, by the way, and put them on. But
Gaffney will take them.
Gaffney will yeah, I mean, everybody's going to want them once they get out there, I'm sure. So so that's moving along, and that's the update with that.
John, are we doing anything with the flyers that Lisa put together? I know she was working on some adjustments to that, and those same graphic problems show up in the flyer, so it's available online, but we're going to want to tweak it before we actually make copies of them and start handing them out. Okay.
You had asked, actually I think it was Bob Mahoney who really kind of emphasized this, wanting to have a joint work session between the Planning Commission and the Transportation Advisory Committee, recognizing that this isn't a legislative a land use approval board, but an advisory committee. So trying to put some time together so that the two bodies could both understand a little bit more about land use approval of traffic impact analysis work or land use decisions and how traffic might impact those land use decisions. So we've established a meeting, and you're all expected to be there if you can make it. April 11th from 7 p.m. Be right here in the Commission chambers. I don't exactly know how we're going to set it up yet. I would guess in pecking order, the Planning Commission sits just slightly above the Transportation Advisory Committee. So we'll have to work out seats, but we'll come up with a solution that I'm sure you guys will either love or hate, one of the two. And then the other thing is John Replinger, who's the traffic engineer who we use for land use approval process. He does all the land use review of any development traffic study. So he'll be there to kind of give you the traffic analysis 101. And so if there's more to the dialogue or agenda that this group would like us to share, be happy to do that. At this point, I think the request was submitted to Laura, who talked it over with the planning commissioner, or at least the planning chair, and decided on the date. And other than that, I think it's really just expecting to have John Replinger provide some kind of a presentation on that.
Roughly speaking, is there a time duration being thought about?
Well, planning commission meetings typically go
forever.
Forever, yeah. So, I would say it'd be nice to get that done in an hour and a half.
Okay.
I'm not the chair of either of those committees, so my opinion doesn't matter much. So Bob, if you want to check with the chair of the planning commission, and that's open as well.
I had thought some more about that extensive discussion at the meeting last month, and that 3 pages of the minutes reflected that about what information the Transportation Committee should get on planning decisions. And I thought of a possible way to do that is that just under a sub-item on the Public Works report, you could make a list of approved developments and list what improvements to major streets are anticipated, or what other transportation issues might have come up on that. We would need to know if somebody's building 2 houses on a flag lot or something, but like 15 condos off a road that already has traffic problems might be interesting to know about. That way, no developers have to come in, and the planning commission's toes wouldn't get stepped on. A little map that shows where that development is too would help. I'm sure they already exist.
As an informational item, not a discussion item. That's all I have.
Okay, item 6, communications. Oh, future agenda items.
I've been wondering if we had an update on Myers Road extension, or is there anything to update?
There's not anything really to update at this time.
Well, that answers that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I am working on something that has fallen to the wayside due to other commitments, but hopefully within the next 60 days we'll have something to give you guys more information on.
Thank you.
I got something for you, Martin.
Okay.
From 1996 until last year, on between 11th and 12th Street on Division, we had a rough road, and then we got a nice smooth road out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's all back again. Looked like a drunken sailor used a shovel to smooth off them.
So the majority of that is because of the sanitary improvement project which we were completing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we've been trying, and we did the first iteration of it this last summer, and we'll do another iteration of it this upcoming summer, is rather than you get a contractor whose specialty is putting in pipe.
Okay.
And tell him, now when you're done, you got to rebuild this road in conjunction with putting in all of this pipe. What we've been trying to do is dovetail work to come in so that the pipe contractor does the pipe, and then the PMUF contractor through the PMUF fund comes in and supplements that project, and we get a paving contractor that comes in and rebuilds the road.
In a lot of places it's sunk.
Yeah. So that's
between 11th and 12th on Division, in front of Morton Road in that area.
Oh, well, that's not a permanent patch. That's a very temporary patch.
It's a big, it's rough.
Yeah. So
our plan there is to completely core that out and rebuild that.
Think of it as a speed bump.
Well, it just got straightened out. We got real nice here for a while.
I understand when you're bidding out these projects for, regardless if it's a pipe or whatever, if it's a bid item to, fix the road, wouldn't they just have a subcontractor that does paving anyways?
Yeah, I want to back up a minute, Martin, because if we're talking Division Street, I thought this was Main Street.
No, it's Division.
On Division Street, yeah, right now the problem with Division Street is that trench went from what we thought was going to be a narrow trench to basically a 10-foot wide trench. So we're going to have to negotiate a change order for that work and what we want to do is rebuild that street to the loading conditions that it has, because there's bus traffic on Division Street. So several years ago we looked at Division Street, and what we learned from the analysis that we did, we had a pavement consultant come out and look at that we needed to build that street properly was going to require 18 inches of rock with about 9 inches of asphalt over the top of it. And so in that stretch of road, because we have that recommendation and because we just built all this new trench material, most of it's already rock and rocked all the way up. So we've got that foundation piece done. We're going to, well, just for constructability reasons, we're going to tear that full road section of 18 plus 9, tear it out for the full lane and the parking strip.
Including the rock you put in for the trench section?
Well, we hope to reuse that, but
Okay.
you kind of got to
Be careful.
there's a little bit of pavement near the center line and a little bit of pavement on the other side, so trying to leave the hump in between probably not going to work. But just tear that out, reconstruct it all, and pave it back to the section that it's really designed for. Now that's only going to be for that, I don't know, 400, 500 feet of pavement, but that's what we would decide. At least that's what we are asking the contractor to quote us. Still got to get the commission to approve that change order, but I think that'll be pretty easy to do.
Now, for the other sections, those ancillary roads, so Buchanan and then 13th and then coming back out towards Lincoln, that's just going that's a patch that they've got on there, and then PMUF is going to come in this summer. And because the reason we do it that way is the project's already over budget, we'd let them just do a temporary patch with a T-cut, and then I get better economy of scale with the PMUF contract because of the quantities that we're buying.
Okay.
So I get a better rate for doing that repair. But that's not the division section. Those are the side streets.
No. That contractor got a PG line the other day.
Anybody have any things they want to have put on future agendas? I'd be interested in your plans for the new operations center. Some kind of presentation on that. I don't know how far along in detail you are.
Probably not quite ready for that. We've been working with the neighborhood to try to gather information from them and some of the neighbors before we actually put concepts out there. But we're probably not far from that. We can add it as a future item and just
Okay,
get it
great.
on there when it makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Anything from anybody else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Alice, are you familiar with the Founders Clinic up there?
Yeah.
At the beginning.